So first thing we got to talk about here is a hot topic. I don't think it should wait for the news. It's something that every New Japan fan, there's been battle lines drawn. People are going back and forth on X, on Reddit, all over the place. And it's about the news of Jon Moxley's first title defense. So we all thought the first defense was going to be wrestling Don Taku against Ren Narita. But Jon Moxley, made his return to AEW TV last Wednesday on Dynamite, kind of cut his big promo, and we saw a feud kind of kickstart between the Blackpool Combat Club and the Don Callis family, which then led to a match being booked between Jon Moxley and Powerhouse Hobbs. And then Saturday on Collision, it was announced Don Callis cut a promo, said he pulled some strings, dating back to Wrestle Kingdom 12, getting Jericho and Omega to happen. He used that favor to get Powerhouse Hobbs an IWGP World Heavyweight title match. So this coming Wednesday on Dynamite in Jacksonville, Florida, Daly's Place, Jon Moxley will defend the IWGP World Heavyweight title against Powerhouse Hobbs.
Yeah, so I mean, peeling back the curtain just a little bit, Jeremy, and I feel comfortable kind of saying this out loud now since Dave Meltzer has already gone public with it, but he basically alluded to the idea that right now, with some of the booking that kind of exists between New Japan and AEW, that Tony Khan, Rocky Romero, and Gato are all working in conjunction with one another to kind of facilitate that. And that actually that correlates with what we were told in Chicago through anonymous sources. Not something we were going to come on the air and be like, oh, breaking news, we heard this, because we heard it. I don't know if it's true, but Dave is saying it. And it kind of seems like that's the case with this most current update.
Yeah. And so obviously this has led a lot of fans. There's been a lot of debate on whether or not this is a bad idea, good idea. I guess I can go first because I feel like we're going to be on different sides of the field here a little bit.
Well, if you don't agree with me, I'm gonna be pissed. So you better figure out what I'm going to say and then agree with me. All right.
Well, I kind of know what you're going to say. I've seen some of your comments on the Discord server. I've seen some of your comments on our show Twitter account, so I kind of know what you're gonna say, where you're coming from. But
I got us engagement.
Here's my thoughts on it. I totally understand and get why people are mad and upset. This is not the same as people being mad and upset about Mox winning the title in the first place. I totally get why people are mad and upset. I saw a lot of really valid, good points that you made, Josh. Other people have made online who don't really like this decision. So what?
You said stiff Josh.
I did.
Well, you said me and then Josh and other people online. I'm like, what Josh are you talking about? Stiff Josh?
I guess so. Yeah, I thought I didn't say you, but anyway, yeah. So I've seen a bunch of people online making a lot of really good points on why this is not the best booking decision. And I think a lot of those points are valid. I think a lot of it makes sense. For me, I personally am not upset about the booking decision. And I don't know. I'm just not as angry as some other people are. I think for me, if this was more of a Kenny Omega situation where, Kenny, he won the belt, the US title at Wrestle Kingdom in January of that year, and he didn't end up defending it until March of that year on Dynamite against Jeff Cobb, and then he didn't defend it again until Forbidden Door, where he lost it to Will Ospreay, not making any other New Japan dates, not coming to Japan, not defending the title. Here in the situation, we know we have dates on Mox. We know he's coming to Japan. He's working both nights of Wrestling Don Taku. He's scheduled for Resurgence. Reports say he's scheduled for the Kazuna Road Tour, which I think is called the Soul, New Japan Soul Tour, and he's scheduled for Dominion. So we know we got dates on Jon Moxley. So I think I'd be very upset if it was all right. He's defending against Hobbs, and then he's not defending again until Forbidden Door, and then he's dropping it, and then it's a similar Kenny Omega situation. But
Right.
we know that he's making New Japan dates. And also, I think we all know that Mox is not losing to Hobbs, so this is not really going to affect the booking going forward. It's kind of a specialty title match kind of thing. He's going to beat Hobbs, and then also he's going to go on to face Narita, go on to face Shooter, and then whoever else he's going to face. And I know I just feel like this could be a lot worse. I mean, it's not like it's being treated like some other titles that come on AEW. AEW works for a lot of other promotions, and we've seen some other promotions all come in. We've seen like the AAA Mega title. We've seen some like CMLL titles, and sometimes those get thrown on Rampage. Those get thrown in Collision. And so, if this was, Jon Moxley defending the title against Evil Uno 10 o'clock Friday on Rampage, yeah, that's a little ridiculous. Or if this was Jon Moxley defending against Taylor, 9:30 Saturday on Collision, I think that'd be really bad. But it's on the A show on Dynamite. It's against Hobbs, who's a guy who's been pushed as a monster. He's in one of the top heel factions. And so I think you can get some eyeballs on the title. You can potentially get some AEW fans kind of clued in and hooked in on what Jon Moxley is doing in New Japan. You can bring some eyeballs over to NJPW World, kind of tap into that Western fan, help you draw in the Western market. You got this Resurgence show that's coming up, needs to sell tickets. He'll be back in August for Capital Collision. So I think it kind of helps there, but I'm just not, as upset as the people are about this.
So, I mean, there are things. There's so many converging views and ideas and personalities and fandoms that are all kind of intertwined into this. And it'd be hard for me to sort of, I don't know. I almost feel like the obligation to speak for the Tony Khan haters, the anti AEW squad. And I'm not, and let's be clear, let's keep it a buck. I'm not in that group personally. I am a fan of AEW. Maybe obviously I'm not doing an AEW podcast, so it's not like it's my day one, but I'm a fan. I watch the show periodically. And I don't have a problem with the idea of Jon Moxley defending the IWGP title on Dynamite, period. What I have an issue with is quite a few things. Number one, Will Hobbs, grade A talent, $1 million look, a guy that should be pushed, a guy that should be used. And, let's not even mince words here. Is there the possibility that there are some fans out there, and I don't know if I couldn't identify them, but is there a possibility that there's a sentiment that some fans hypothetically don't want Will Hobbs to be the challenger because he's a person of color? That's definitely a possibility. Racism is alive and well in 2024. For me, that's not it either. It's pretty simple. The guy didn't earn the title shot. He's never factored into New Japan storylines or New Japan's kayfabe one way or the other. And at best, on his best day right now, the highest you could ever call him in AEW is an upper mid-carder. But he's realistically more like a monster mid-carder, a guy that they dust off every now and again, and is pretty much, as of now, and this isn't speaking to his character or speaking to his talents, but just the way he's been booked on the show, he's a no-hoper. If he's a guy that challenges for like the world title, which I don't even know if he ever has, I doubt it.
Yeah, I can't remember him challenging. It could be maybe during the dark days, maybe he could have gotten something, but I don't think he has.
He's not going to win the title. You know what I mean? And he's not a top draw and he's not a top star in the company. Maybe one day that will happen for him, but like his greatest claim to fame is like beating Chris Jericho, I think, at this point. And maybe like beating Ricky Starks clean in a feud ender. He's not a guy that should be the first challenger for Jon Moxley's IWGP heavyweight title on North American television. The message that it sends to, and the optics of it, it makes it look like the IWGP title is a significantly inferior title to the AEW title. Um, because I mean, maybe this headlines the show. That's possible, but to me, this screams like 9 o'clock hour match that goes like sub 15 minutes, and Will Hobbs puts up a valiant effort, and then Jon Moxley beats him. Honestly, this would have been a fine title eliminator style match. AEW is like very famous for having those title. We're going to review one later on the show where Rocky Romero challenges um
Roderick Strong.
Roderick Strong in a title eliminator, number one contender type situation. That would have been the perfect slotting for a guy like Will Hobbs, who has never worked for New Japan, never been ranked. I mean, not that there's rankings, but like has never he's not even part of the company in any way, facet, shape, or form. And he's a mid card guy. And basically, what's happening here, and there's no two ways about it, it's just the truth. New Japan's getting little homied again by AEW. And now there are varying reactions to this. There are some people that are really, really upset. There's some people that just don't care. And then there's people that are like in the middle or whatever. And I guess that's fine. But it's just the truth. The truth is they're taking Jon Moxley's first title defense, putting it on North American television for AEW and giving him a significantly inferior challenger who hasn't done anything to deserve the title shot.
Yeah, and I think that is definitely a valid point, and I would have been fine, if they did a title eliminator match, and because we know regardless, Hobbs is not winning, so you could have done a title eliminator. Oh yeah, if he beats Mox, he'll be next in line after the Resurgence match, and you could have played that up, and then obviously Mox wins, and then you forget about it. And I'm not saying I like the booking decision or like I'm asking for this or they should have done it. I'd been perfectly fine if this never happened and Mox was just doing New Japan. But we're here, and I don't know. I just feel like I kind of expect it now from the AEW relationship, and I'm also definitely there's a lot of influence. I know that the reports are obviously New Japan it's their title. They're still involved in the booking decisions, but obviously with Rocky Romero, our good friend who's a VP in both companies, and the talks of Tony Khan, I'm sure there is a lot of heavy AEW influence with obviously Moxley, and it's something I think you kind of mentioned a few weeks ago, where it's like, all right, how much is Tony Khan willing to give up Moxley when they're on a TV renewal year? They need to get ratings up. Mox is the top draw. He's already missed a lot of TV. They want to get him on TV, and cut a great promo last
week. Strongest.
Say that one more time.
The ratings haven't been the strongest lately.
Yeah, they've been finishing, in top 10 every Wednesday night. Usually top 3, top 5. But yeah, I'll see Moxley. He's the heart and soul of that promotion. He ratings draw, merchandise draw, top draw. And so he's definitely a guy they're going to want to utilize on TV. So obviously from a Tony Khan standpoint, I get obviously, hey, it's my guy. I want to use him. And also, I'm a fanboy and I love the IWGP title. I want to have a defense on my show. So from his standpoint, I get that. But also from the New Japan standpoint, it's like, all right, we already have established the story of Ren Narita, Shota Umino. Those are the kind of the next players. And then this kind of gets thrown out of nowhere.
I mean, there are some positives. One thing I will say, this past today's Road to show, Chris Charlton did an immaculate job at spinning the story, painting the picture, and explaining what occurred in the kayfabe when it comes to Don Callis, and basically putting all the heat on Don Callis for the Western New Japan fans that are tuning in. So I thought he did a really good job with that, and that's fine. Also, the theme so far from what we're seeing is that Jon Moxley is taking on the younger generation of challengers in New Japan, and Will Hobbs can somewhat thematically fit into that role as well. A guy that's on the come up who hasn't had a title shot the same way Shota Umino hasn't, the same way Ren Narita hasn't. So there is some comparison, some similarities. I think where it really breaks down is like for this, like the AEW fans that feel so passionate that they need to defend this. I think what it really comes down to, if we're just keeping it a buck, is that they're afraid that with TV negotiations and TV rights deals coming up, any kind of complaint, any sort of criticism or any sort of slight against the brand that they love is going to hurt the chances of a better television deal. And I feel like that's like the perception or the underlying current of what motivates their arguments and why they're willing to look past the reality that, like, at the end of the day, it's poor booking. And on the New Japan side, I think most of those fans, it's an inferiority complex. They see a company that came in and in a matter of a couple short years became the number 2 by a wide margin and really usurped their role, not just worldwide, but especially in the West. And so they feel some kind of way about being mistreated by their supposed partner, you know? And there's
Mm.
varying degrees to how people feel about that. There's some like very heavy, puro heavy, like gatekeepery type fans that, like, I've listened to some shows this past week where they fucking hate Tony Khan. You know what I mean? That exists. That sentiment is out there. And then there's others who are just like, damn, this devalues the IWGP title. And like, the only real valid argument I hear from people in the space that are keeping it a buck, you know, 2 that I can think of, just kind of throwing it out there, and they're friends of the show. Adam from
Big audio
what's
nightmare.
yeah, Big Audio Nightmare, and then Rich Latta, you know, both of them talked about how um this title's already been devalued by, and that's a valid argument. The title has been devalued by New Japan by a variety of booking decisions. And so to them, it's like, what, you know, what's one more slight against a title that's already been devalued? And I do think that there is a point to that. But I think for New Japan fans, their hope was taking the title off Naito and putting it on Moxley and getting him to work with the young guys was potentially a push in a new direction to where um you know, and the title gets elevated, prestige gets added to the title, and instead it's getting booked like a lower mid card belt on AEW's television, which is really not what I think most people envision for this title run. Long term, do I think 2 or 3 weeks from now we're going to remember this and people, the outrage is going to be as warranted? No, I don't. But I also don't think that this is that different. I made the meme, people saw it when Scott Norton was IWGP title and he defended against Lodi and he defended against Van Hammer on Monday Nitro. And now obviously Will Hobbs, much greater talent than those guys, but the optics of it, it's not that different. It's kind of the exact same thing. It's a mid-card no-hoper guy getting booked in a position for a title that, like, realistically, I think the way that New Japan fans see the IWGP title, if Moxley's holding it, the type of guys that should be challenging for it would be like Adam Cole, Chris Jericho, MJF, Swerve, Hangman Adam Page, Samoa Joe. That's the kind of caliber. Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada, Jay White,
And
like
Danielson.
Danielson. So, you know, the kind of guys that are like the upper echelon main eventers of the program, those are the kind of matches that should be taking place for that title. And it's not happening. So I see all sides, you know. I'm not going to be a bad faith actor here and just hold firm to one side, but at the end of the day, I do think this is going to blow over and people are going to forget about it. I just think it is a shame that New Japan is letting it happen. And I think it's a shame that Tony Khan decided that this was the right booking decision for his partners, because optically it just doesn't look good. And last thing I will say, imagine, if you will, just to kind of throw a scenario out there. Swerve Strickland, friend of the show, incredible talent. Congratulations, first African American world champion for AEW. And I said this in Rich's comments, and I just want to throw this out there because this highlights how New Japan fans feel. What if he had to defend his newly minted AEW world title at Road to Dontaku Night 3 in Korakuen Hall against the Great Okan? because that's the equivalent of what they've done to Jon Moxley and to the New Japan fans.
Yeah, well, no, obviously Tony Khan will not let that happen. If it's going to be defended, he'd be like, "Hey, put that on Don Taku, put that on Dominion." So again, that's where the power dynamic
And
happens
that's the
there.
point. And that's the point. It's the same thing. That would be optically so fucking bad looking for the AEW title. And for anyone, and then the argument would, from someone like me, if I was playing bad faith actor, I'd be like, well, I mean, look what they did to that title in Wembley with Adam Cole and MJF throwing the title down, hugging each other, fighting over who's the better friend. You know, what's one more slight against the AEW title? You know,
Yeah.
that's
Um,
my argument.
Yeah, one good thing I think that they're doing that we haven't really seen in the past. I feel like they're actually just talking about it more. In the past, there's been stuff happening with AW wrestlers on New Japan shows or winning titles, and they haven't really shown highlights or mentioned it. But I think they've been kind of driving home the point since Moxley won the belt. They talked about he won the belt in Chicago. They showed clips. They're constantly mentioning the IWGP and what it means, and kind of promoting the fact that Moxley is it's a New Japan champion. So I think at least if we're gonna have this, at least that's kind of a step in the right direction to kind of actually act, show that it happened. Even when Kenny won the US title, it was like it was only really mentioned when he defended against Cobb. Besides that, it was just kind of like hidden away. So I mean, at least there's some visibility there.
I agree. There is some visibility, but what does that ultimately do for New Japan? Because Kenny was it's not a one for one. You're correct. There are differences, but when Kenny was the US champion, he came out with that belt. He defended against Jeff Cobb. How many like subscriptions to New Japan World do you think really went up from that? You know what I mean? Like it didn't do much for them. At the end of the day, Jon Moxley is working a much more hectic and busy schedule and really offering himself up to be able to work all these extra dates for New Japan and to be a defending champion, which is especially in Japan, which is definitely welcome. But at the end of the day, what does that tell? And we're gonna use the term the casual fan. What does that tell the casual fan who tunes in on a Wednesday night and they're like, oh, Jon Moxley's the New Japan champion, and he's defending against Will Hobbs? Now granted, they've had some throwaway IW or AEW title defenses on TV before against guys that were no hopers. So maybe the best case scenario here, and this is me just being optimistic, maybe we get a situation or a scenario that's similar to like when Kenny Omega defended the AEW title against a guy like Phoenix, someone who like had no chance of winning, but like a classic match was birthed out of it. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to do much for the trajectory of Phoenix's career coming out of that. But maybe it'll be different for Will Hobbs. I don't know. But like to me, the idea that the IWGP title is a story beat and a placeholder in the middle of a mid-card feud involving Don Callis's family, not the most prestigious thing in the world.